welcome to this episode of Let's Talk 716 Sports. Today, my special guest is Mike Lindsley, and we'll be talking some baseball. How do you think the Yankees look this year so far?
Well, I'm not surprised at what's happened. I thought going into this year, it was a very, it's just predictable with them every year. I mean, they lack starting pitching. So far, that part of it has hung in, for the most part. I mean, they've had a couple of bad spot starts here and there. I mean, Corey Kluber, in Tampa got rocked. Obviously, there's been, as we record this, Domingo Germán's having a hard time. There have been a couple of moments where the pitchers have struggled, but overall, probably not the reason why they're struggling and are losing games. I mean, it's the typical. It will eventually be starting pitching. Mark my words. Plus timely hitting, and so I just think that they've been made up the same exact way for years. They finally get a starting pitcher in Garrett Cole who can be an ace, and then the rest of the rotation is a total question mark. They have guys who can't get hits with 2 outs. I mean, the runners in scoring position thing has been an issue for a while, and you can't bat DJ LeMahieu 9 times a game. So this is a DNA problem. It's a makeup problem. It's a Brian Cashman problem. They're not balanced. They're not versatile. They're too reliant on the home run, and they're way overloaded with power on the right side. They need more contact hitters who can also field their position, who are versatile. I can't stand Gary Sanchez behind the plate. So this is where we're at right now. I mean, this Yankee team is too predictable. Brian Cashman has basically made them into a regular season team, 95 to 100 win team, and then they'll lose in the playoffs because they get exposed with the things that I just talked about.
What do you like about Garrett Cole as a starting pitcher?
Well, I just think there's a couple of things. I think one is up here, he's a different animal. I just think he attacks the game in different ways. He's a perfectionist. He wants every single inning he goes out there, he wants to be better than the last. Here's a guy who would throw a no-hitter and then the next time out want a perfect game. So he's just that kind of guy. He attacks. He understands things. He asks questions. He's humble. I just like him a lot. I mean, I think he's a fireball out there, and I think he's a perfect guy to have be an ace of your rotation. But again, the problem is the Yankees have needed that guy for multiple years now, and all of a sudden now the rest of the rotation, we don't really know if those guys are going to hold up. I mean, they're basically counting on Jameson Taillon, and they're counting on Corey Kluber, 2 guys who have a ton of baggage and injuries. You're counting on Germán. Yeah. You're counting on maybe Severino coming back, a Jordan Montgomery. And we know the Yankees don't have a lot of success in terms of, growing their own guys. So Garrett Cole has a lot of pressure on him. And that's why, again, opening day, I'm not overreacting to this, in my opinion. Other people might think so, but you can't lose that game on opening day because it was a Garrett Cole start. You've got to win those games where you're in position. You put that many people on base, you got to score a few more runs because you have your ace on the mound in that game. It's the same exact thing crosstown in Queens. When you have Jacob deGrom on and he's going 6, 7, 8 innings and he's allowing 1 run and you leave, 15 guys on base, it's unacceptable.
Do you think Aaron Judge is a good outfielder?
As far as a good outfielder, I think when Aaron Judge is healthy, he's one of the top players in the game, but he can't stay healthy. We haven't really seen a 6'7", 275-pound man play outfield and hit for average and hit for power in the game's history, really. The problem is the Yankees have 2 of those guys. Now, Giancarlo Stanton might be a little bit less in the weight department, but they're the same player. Luke Voit, another one, right? So I guess there's 3 of them. The Yankees have too many of the same guys. Big slugger from the right side, swinging for the fences. It's just absurd. Stanton has come out of the gate looking horrendous. No surprise there for me. Judge is injured, and Luke Voit is injured. So it's the same thing every year.
what do you think of the Toronto Blue Jays coming back to Buffalo?
Well, I mean, it's great for the city of Buffalo. I think, especially since now that there's fans back in some kind of capacity, and it's a very familiar place for a lot of those guys. Obviously, with the AAA team there with the Bisons, I can tell you this: if you're in Buffalo and you're listening to me talk right now on this show, go see this team play, because if you don't, you're going to regret it, because Toronto has guys who, when I saw these guys all play in the minor leagues. When the Bisons came to Syracuse, I saw him play several times. I mean, Vlad Guerrero, Kevin Biggio, and Bo Bichette are as real as it gets as far as a young trio of players. I knew right away they were going to be studs. Saw them in the minor leagues. They obviously come from unbelievable baseball pedigrees. Vlad Guerrero Jr., I met him in Cooperstown at his dad's induction, a few years back. And Bo Bichette, obviously, with Dante being one of the great hitters of our last, 20, 25 years in baseball. And Biggio, Craig Biggio's son, Kevin, Craig Biggio's a 3,000 hit guy, one of the most versatile players in baseball history, in the Hall of Fame. So these three guys have grown up with it. They know how to be big leaguers. They're professional, and they're really, really good. And that's a good thing for Buffalo to see that. And frankly, it's kind of nice to take a break from the Sabres.
What do you think of Rowdy Tellez in Toronto?
Solid, again, I mean, I just think this team has a lot of guys who are primed and ready to break out, and I think if they get all these guys collectively, much like in Washington, what you saw with finally Steven Strasburg, staying healthy for a long campaign, Juan Soto is a stud. Victor Robles, and I saw Robles play in games, in Syracuse against those aforementioned Bisons, by the way. Robles and Vlad Guerrero in the same game was pretty cool. And so I just think they have a lot of those guys. I mean, I think they have a lot of those guys who are just ready to pounce, ready to mushroom. I think the same could be said for, the White Sox. I think there's multiple teams in baseball who are in that department. Unfortunately, the Yankees aren't one of them.
Do you think that the Toronto Blue Jays will make the playoffs this year?
I have them falling just short. I picked the Yankees to win the division, and then I picked the Rays and the A's to make the wild card. The Oakland pick, I don't feel that great about. The Tampa Bay pick, I feel great about. I only picked those two teams because they figure out somehow, some way, they figure out to get back a way to get back to the playoffs. The A's don't have a ton of success when they're there. We know the Rays, made the World Series last year and certainly won the pennant in 2008 as well. But they figure it out somehow, some way. I mean, it's easy to say, well, Blake Snell is, traded to San Diego and Charlie Morton's in Atlanta. And, they're counting on, Glass now to be the number one guy in the Ace. And, and say there's just not enough there. There's not enough there. There always seems to be just enough there, for them to get into the playoffs. Oakland, I probably would take that back and either go with Toronto or the Angels as the other wild card team, at least from what I've seen so far this year. But I have them falling just short. I think they're probably a year away. The bullpen concerns me a little bit, and the back end of the rotation, you just don't know if those guys can hold up for the whole year.
What do you think about having fans back in the stands for the sports games?
Well, I think it's great. I mean, obviously, I think we're long overdue. I think they really could have, going back to some of the NFL postseason games. I mean, I thought that even, the games in Buffalo with 6,700 people, I thought they could have easily had 15, 20,000 people and opened up some of the top deck. Baseball stadiums as well. I mean, you get a stadium that's, 42, 43,000 capacity. There's no reason why you can't have, 15, 20,000 people in there. I mean, most people at this point who I've talked to, who I know in a lot of parts of the country, have gotten at least one of the corona vaccines. Many people have already been completely vaccinated. people are, we're still wearing masks. So I don't know why we're limiting it to just what it is right now. I'm not necessarily saying that you should go all out like Texas with the Rangers, but I think that there's enough out there. We know enough about this thing at this particular point. It's time to open up our economy more. I mean, you cannot lock down the United States of America forever here, and sports are a big part of our country in terms of not just entertainment and bringing us together, but it's a business. I mean, every sport's a business. Major League Baseball, NHL, NBA, NFL, they're all big business, and they get a lot of that big business from the fans.
And there was some NHL news that broke earlier. Brendan Montour got traded to Florida for a draft pick. What do you think of that?
Well, I'm not surprised. I had Bill Hoppy on, my buddy from BuffaloHockeyBeat.com, and he had said that Montour would probably be on the block as well. I mean, I think that really nobody's safe for the Sabres. Montour is probably one of the best values out there on the roster for sure. A guy who hasn't had a horrendous season like most Buffalo Sabres have, and it's part of a house clean for the Sabres to, I guess, continue to start over here. I mean, if Granato's that coach, moving forward, who comes back, that kind of thing. But that's a good spot for him to go. I mean, Florida's I've seen some of their games this year. They're a very, very fun team. The kid Barkov is great. That'll add a lot of depth back there. They've gotten solid goaltending. They've hung in there against some of the best teams in that division. I like that Florida team a lot, and they can fly. So that's a good spot for him. He'll be able to push the puck up the ice, and I think anywhere but Buffalo right now is a good spot. I mean, look at Eric Stahl got traded to the Canadiens. He scored in his first game. Ryan O'Reilly gets traded a few years ago to the Blues, and the guy's a complete stud and wins the Stanley Cup. The Sabres are a disaster right now, and it's good for Montour to get out of there.
Do you think Taylor Hall would be the next guy to get traded?
I mean, if you're a Sabres fan, you hope so, because you want to get something for him, right? I mean, you signed him to a 1-year, $8 million deal, and he's at this particular point done nothing, and he came to Buffalo because of Ralph Kruger, and now Kruger's gone. So, you want to trade something for him, and you want to get something back, whether it's a mid to low level pick times 2. I would hope that they can figure out a way to move him, but it's a bunch of money, and he hasn't produced. Now, could that change if he's in a new atmosphere? Very possible. But clearly the Sabres should probably do everything they need, whatever they're able to do to get rid of Taylor Hall.
Do you think that, like, the Sabres could beat the Flyers?
In what sense? I mean, if they were to face them in a playoff series down the line, or in a regular game from here to the end of the season, you take the ice and you think you can beat anybody, I guess, every given day. But this is a team that lost 18 games in a row. So, I don't have a lot of confidence in this club at all. I mean, I know they turned it around and went 3-0-2, but now they're on a 2-game losing streak again. So, they're just, that's a total mess there. The culture's a mess. They got to get something in order. I'm not sure if the Pagulas can handle 2 teams. I mean, I think that's one thing that has not been talked about enough is how many people really out there are owning 2 franchises, and how many of them have both of them relatively successful as far as a contending playoff team, or a championship contending team, or somewhere in the middle. I don't know. I think we might be getting proof right here that it's maybe nearly impossible to run and own 2 teams at the same time.
What did you think of the Bills this year?
Well, it was an amazing season. I mean, they checked so many boxes for their future and for the here and now as a franchise, right? I mean, my goodness, we talked about, we haven't had a quarterback since Josh Allen or since Jim Kelly, and we were waiting, and then boom, they get Diggs and they get more offensive pieces, and Allen becomes an MVP type guy, and then they win the division, they sweep the division, and then they go to the playoffs, and it was, well, you got to win at least one playoff game. They win two. And then they lost in the AFC title game to the team that won the Super Bowl last year with the best player and arguably the best head coach and the best OC and, one of the best franchises in the NFL. But, when you finish in the Final Four, I mean, you've had a really good year in the NFL. It's awfully hard to get back. And I know that most Bills Mafia members think that it's just an automatic. Well, they went to the AFC title game last year and lost to the Chiefs. So the next logical step is you got to make the Super Bowl now. It doesn't work like that because you have to hit the reset button. Everything starts over. Your team comes back. The Bills are bringing the band back together. Obviously, I love what they're doing. Feliciano and Williams and Milano and McKenzie. And then they've kind of, throwing a few things here, there in free agency. I love the Matt Breida signing. I think Hawk will help you as a punter. But what it boils down to is it's a new season. I mean, 2020 is over. And so you go into 2021 and it's still the same thing. Your opponents are going to be better. There's more video out on you. People are chasing you. You now have a bullseye on your back. I mean, think about that for a minute. People are chasing the Buffalo Bills in the NFL. And, the final thing I'll say about all of that is that, your opponents are better, in the division as well. I mean, the Patriots went out and spent a ton of money. The Jets have got 21 draft picks, a lot of draft capital in the next 2 years. I think the Dolphins are going to be a problem moving forward. I mean, they're well coached. They seem to have their, what together. So, and then you got to deal with the Chiefs. You got to deal with the Ravens. You got to deal with the Colts. So it's going to be tough sledding for the Bills. But having said that, the other side of it says the Bills are pretty good too. And if you're good, you're good. And you should be able to beat anybody if you're really good. And they are really good.
What team should the Bills be afraid of in the AFC East?
I think it's Miami. I do. I think they've built a culture there. I think Brian Flores is a hell of a coach. They've got some nice pieces too in the draft. I mean, if Tua, they're going to hang in there with Tua, and if Tua can get a Waddle or Devontae Smith or a Jamar Chase in the draft, I mean, that's spectacular for them. They need a weapon or two or three around Tua because, look, Josh Allen had a great year, but a lot of it had to do with, a consistent offensive line, him spending more time with the OC and Brian Dable, and getting Stephon Diggs and having Cole Beasley. So here's the thing, the NFL, people don't realize this. I mean, to be a great quarterback, to be an elite quarterback, it's split down the middle. It really is. One side is it's on the quarterback, right? The quarterback has to work hard and nutrition and nutrition and diet and keep conditioned and stay healthy and be a leader and be a good teammate and all the know the playbook, all the stuff that we know that a quarterback has to do on his own. Having said that, the other half of it is a lot of it's out of someone's control, where you can be a really, really good quarterback, but you're in a bad situation. And so, you need help around you. You need an offensive line. You've got to have a good blindside tackle. You've got to have weapons. In a lot of cases, you have to have a good defense because you can't be out there all day long, right? Or at least a good enough defense in today's offensive world. So I think that the Bills have set the model now, and I think you're going to see teams like the Dolphins and the Jets. And maybe even Bill Belichick with New England. I mean, copying a little bit more of what Buffalo has done, recently.
How do you think the Bills look this year, like with their defense and their offense?
Well, I think they're a Super Bowl contender. I mean, I think it's that simple. I think that they have the ability to go out and win the division again, make the playoffs, and make noise in the playoffs. They have the ability to get to the Super Bowl. But the playoffs start and it's a new season. I also think that the Bills could lose in the first game that they play in the playoffs, whenever that is. That could be them winning the division and having home field, and not getting even to championship weekend, right? So, I think I like what Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott have done. Obviously, I think keeping people together is the right move, and then kind of filling in, guys here and there. You go get a Hollister who played with Josh Allen. You build the depth there at tight end. I still think there's a lot left in Dawson Knox. I think there's a lot left in Singletary and Moss in the backfield. I'm not giving up on those guys at all. And the Bills have stayed with a lot of their players too. I mean, look at Taron Johnson. They stuck with him. They stuck with Levi Wallace. They're bringing him back too, by the way. They've stuck with a lot of players, and eventually those players, do something very impactful. So I think their team's really good. Will they be as good as last year? It's possible. The bar is so high. The expectations are so high. But it's possible that they could be, but you can be a better team in a different year and not go as far, right? Because it's just how sports work. You can get into a situation where, let's say the Bills go 14-2 this year, which I don't think they will. I think they'll take a step back a little bit. I think they're about an 11 or 12 win team. But let's say that they were to go 14-2 and get home field advantage, right? In the AFC playoffs. But it just so happens that it's the Colts here, somebody has a breakout season, or the Bills have a key injury in the playoffs. I mean, there's a million things that can happen. But I think the Bills are as good as can be, going into another year.
Where can people find you or listen to what you talked about?
Yeah, you can find me on all the major platforms, Spotify, Google, Apple, Stitcher, Deezer, Amazon Music, iHeart, CastBox, you name it. I host the ML Sports Platter podcast show, and then you can catch my Bills Brawl podcast as well. It's simply called that, Bills Brawl, and it's all a part of the Brawl Network. And I'm at pinstripepassion.com, covering a lot of the Major League Baseball and Yankee stuff. And there's a ton of archived interviews that I have on that website with baseball greats and sports great Hall of Famers. I mean, from Pedro Martinez to Andre Dawson to Whitey Ford to Bob Shepard to Dick Enberg to Bryce Harper and Steven Strasburg and the minors to Don McPherson and Jack Nicklaus and Jim Kelly and Gilbert Perreault. It's endless. So I've got that site up there with some archived interviews, and you can hit me all over social media as well. The number one, obviously, that I use most is Twitter, and that's at Mike L Sports. And then I do 1 minute ML Sports takes and 9-minute segments from my friends at Rosie's locally in Central New York. And those are all over the place on TikTok, YouTube, IGTV. So check me out all over the place there. And by the way, if anybody's listening to this in Central New York, I also write for Table Hopping Magazine, which is a once a month publication that covers sports and entertainment and music, culture, the local scene through and through in every possible way. So if you go to any real major restaurant, you'll be able to pick up a Table Hopping Magazine and go check out my articles in that as well.
Thank you for watching this episode of Let's Talk Someone Six Sports. Thank you to my guest, Mike Lindsley, and have a great day.
All right, bud. Thanks for having me. You too.